Under the rules 2 days before the Ghost Festival, I began receiving text messages from unknown numbers. Grandma is already dead. She will not appear in the house. When Dad's right hand appears, it is safe. When Mom pins her hair up, it's safe. I love you. Crossed out, Mom doesn't love you. Don't easily anger your elders. They're the reasonable ones. You must not leave the house before 3 a.m. on the Ghost Festival. But that very day, Dad carried Grandma back home on his back. I was a little puzzled when I got the message. I'd never seen that number before. Could it be some classmate's prank again? Bored. I shook my head to cast the suspicion aside, but then a loud crash came from downstairs. A wave of unease rose in my chest. I rushed down the stairs. Father stood in the doorway, his back bent, carrying Grandma dressed in a white burial shroud on his shoulders. Grandma! I stood at the top of the stairwell, unable to move forward. Grandma was frail. She had died 2 years ago after a fall, but now she lay peacefully on Dad's back, perfectly unharmed. The pure white burial gown was stained with dirt, as if it had just been dug up from the earth. Grandma's face was deathly pale, yet strange red smudges stained both cheeks. From the doorway to the dining table was only a few steps, but Dad was already drenched in sweat, breathing hard. He made a raspy huff-huff sound and finally set Grandma down on a chair. Grandma sat there, her legs hanging limp as if they'd snap at the slightest breeze. What are you still standing there for? Didn't you see Grandma came in? Aren't you going to greet her? Even though he had put Grandma down, Dad stayed bent over, his raised neck forming a strange curve that made my skin crawl. I shoved my phone into my pocket and, trembling, stepped closer to Grandma, but before I could speak I was grabbed. So fragrant. Luna smells so good. It's been so long since I smelled this. Grandma's eyes gleamed with a fierce light, her rough hands rubbing mine hard as she smiled at me. This meat? No, these hands are really tender. Grandma's drool was about to drip onto my hand. I quickly pulled my hand back and forced out a couple of awkward laughs. Dad kept bent over. It was sweltering, yet he was wearing long sleeves. I was about to ask him what on earth was going on when a gust of wind blew, and his right sleeve was clearly empty. I backed away a few steps in terror. When Dad's right hand appears, it is safe. Could it be that Dad is no longer safe? He stared at me, took something out of his pocket, and placed it on the table, grinning. Eat. Hurry up and eat. I specially brought you some candy. He motioned for me to eat while shoveling handful after handful into his own mouth. But it was clearly a pile of bones with bits of flesh not properly stripped away, giving off a rank, bloody stench. A wave of nausea rose in my stomach. Without looking back, I ran into the kitchen. Mom was cooking. Mom is safe when her hair is tied up. Fortunately, Mom had her hair neatly and cleanly pinned up. Mom, how did Grandma come back? Didn't she? My mother clamped a hand over my mouth. The pressure so strong it shoved me into the counter behind me. When I looked up, Dad was standing in the kitchen doorway. His once tall frame had become eerily gaunt, hunched to barely half the height of the door. He pounded on the open door with force, again and again, his face swollen red, even tinged with purple, as if something were strangling his neck. Shut up. Shut up. Why do you have to be so noisy? Don't anger the elders. My scalp prickled. I hurried to cover it up with a speed I had never known in my life. It was the cat that knocked things over, not me. It has nothing to do with me. Dad froze in his tracks, staring hard at the spot behind him. I turned my head. Mom, I didn't notice when, had let her hair down. Dad came in and, together with Mom, selected vegetables and cooked like a loving couple. It would have been even better if what was being chopped on the cutting board weren't indistinct chunks of flesh. I glanced over, and the hair on my arms stood up instantly. It was a skin cat. Dad bent over it, his face almost touching the meat, muttering to himself. I really am a good father. Luna, be good, okay? Daddy loves you the most. I covered my mouth, stifling the rising nausea, and used the excuse of needing the bathroom to hide inside the restroom. Call the police. Call the police now. I took out my phone, but a bunch of text messages automatically popped up. Don't eat meat. Don't drink the soup. Vegetables are safe. Cherish the rice. The house is very clean. There won't be any strange bugs. Don't go into Mom and Dad's room. Whatever you do, don't go in. If you accidentally go, hide in the closet immediately. People inside the closet can't hear the sound from outside. Between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. tonight, you cannot refuse Grandma's requests. If the doll mom gave you shows red eyes, it can protect you. If Grandma becomes enraged, quickly press the Joss paper from the storage room onto her face. I skimmed through them quickly, my finger unconsciously dialing the emergency number. Damn, no signal. Classmates, teachers, every single phone. None of them work. It felt as if I alone had been cut off and stranded in this absurd, otherworldly place. Bang! With a thunderous crash, I fell onto the tiled floor, groping and only managing to grab a toilet brush. Somehow Grandma had pushed the bathroom door open, a head stuck through, her tongue hanging out, grotesque, drooling constantly, and unable to pull it back. I stood there frozen with fear, clutching the toilet brush, swallowing again and again, trying to calm myself down. Luna, come eat. So many good things. She planted both hands on the floor and, impossibly fast, began to crawl toward me. One hand grabbed my foot, her fingernails digging deep into the flesh of my calf. Large patches of livor mortis marred her skin. Writhing maggots crowded together, slowly forcing their way into the horizontal folds of flesh on her face. I kicked away and scrambled to my feet, only then realizing that Grandma was actually lying flat on the floor with her whole body pressed down. Grandma's legs. She couldn't walk. There were heavy footsteps outside. It was Dad. You don't provoke your elders. I hurriedly dropped the toilet brush, too disgusted to care, disregarding consequences, grabbed Grandma's hand, and feigned innocence as I spoke to my dad, who was nearly furious. Grandma must have slipped because the bathroom leaked again this morning. It even caused me to fall a moment ago. I need to go to the property management tomorrow and give them a piece of my mind. Grandma was hoisted back onto the chair, and chunks of rotting flesh fell from her from time to time, the wet smacks drawing a raucous celebration of malformed insects I had never seen before. But she was untroubled, humming a ballad I didn't recognize, occasionally tossing a piece of meat down to the insects beneath her. There are no insects in the house, so these must be parasitic on Grandma, appearing on their own when it's mealtime. And Father was devouring his food like a man possessed. He had stacked 8 bowls beside him, and later even put down his chopsticks, grabbing the dishes with his bare hands and tearing into them. Except what he was clearly eating was an arm. There was a dark red birthmark at the base of the thumb. This was Father's right hand. I covered my mouth, afraid I'd scream, and watched as Father's reddened eyes steadily swallowed, bone and all, his own arm. Luna, don't stare around while you eat. That was the first sentence Mom had spoken to me today. Her face was pale, her eyes pitch black, without a trace of light, staring blankly at her bowl. Mom's hair was pinned up, which should have meant she was safe, so why was she utterly unmoved by Grandma's and Dad's strangeness? She didn't even show a hint of fear. I signaled to her with my eyes, but she didn't speak again, gave no response at all. I could almost believe the person sitting in front of me was nothing but an empty shell. Empty shell? I stared at the flies swarming around my mother's neck and stopped looking around. My mother had always been tidy, always dressed herself neatly and appropriately. Maybe the woman in front of me was no longer safe. The message had laid out too much at once. It looked like tonight was going to be unbearable. The old rule said you couldn't leave the house before 3 in the morning on Ghost Festival night, which meant the only chance to go out would be at 3 o'clock. There were still 2 days until the festival, just one more day to get through. In the white porcelain bowl there was a spread of crimson, and a pair of ears floated on the surface, black ichors seeping from them, countless tangled hairs filthy and soaking in the broth. They didn't care at all, as if it were some delicacy of the human world. To stop them from picking at my food, I forced myself to finish the whole bowl of plain white rice in one sitting. The book said that the more you eat white rice, the sweeter it becomes, that your mouth and tongue will taste a returning sweetness. But right now, I want to cry. After the 16th bowl was set down, Dad finally stopped eating. His gaunt body hung over a huge belly. The thin summer shirt could hardly contain it. the stomach pulled taut and round, veins standing out across the exposed skin. I turned back to stare at the empty bowl to check for any stray grains of rice. But then I heard Dad speak. "Luna, tonight Grandma will sleep in the same room as you. You must take good care of her, okay? 3 years ago, my father's company failed, which directly saddled our family with a huge debt. Our big house was mortgaged off, and we moved into this shabby little apartment. There are 2 rooms upstairs, one for my parents and one for me. There really was nowhere left to put Grandma." No sooner had Dad finished speaking than Grandma let out an embarrassed laugh, her old face flushing. At an inappropriate moment, I thought of that line. Whenever I think of you, this ugly face of mine blooms with tenderness. I wanted to cry, but had no tears. The thought of me made Grandma's stomach feel full. The doors and windows were tightly shut. The doors that couldn't be opened, and the family's abnormal behavior suffocated me, as if I were sealed in a massive coffin and everything around me was merely my burial goods. Night came quickly. Mom linked arms with Dad and went back to their room, leaving only Grandma and me in the living room. She sat upright on the sofa like a statue drained of its soul. I watched the clock hands move from 10 to 11, then to 11:30. "Tonight, between midnight and 2 a.m., you must not refuse Grandma's requests." I trembled as I stood up and said to Grandma, "Grandma, I'm going to bed first. You should get some rest, too." It wasn't even midnight. I couldn't stay any longer. After saying that, I didn't dare look at her again and rushed upstairs. "The doll will protect you." The rag doll my mother sewed for me with her own hands. When I first started sleeping alone as a child, I wasn't used to it, so my mother made a doll by hand to keep me company. I dug it out from the back of the wardrobe. It was already very old, but the 2 button eyes at this moment had become real human eyes. A pair of familiar peach blossom eyes that had watched me for 18 years. Those eyes were wide open, bloodshot, staring at me. No matter from which angle I looked, they never stopped watching me. I swallowed and cautiously called out, "Mom." The doll closed its eyes. Was it answering me? A sudden, daring thought occurred to me. Could my mother really be inside it? Gusts of icy wind slapped against the window, their mournful sound making me clutch the doll to my chest. I burrowed deeper under the covers. My eyelids grew heavier, my mind increasingly muddled. I couldn't stay awake any longer when, suddenly, ding-dong, a new message arrived. "You must be in bed before 3 a.m. Please do not close your eyes or leave the bed until the alarm goes off at 9:30 tomorrow morning." I stared at the message and completely fell apart, so I had to stay up the entire night. I hurriedly rubbed my cheeks hard, trying to make myself more awake. Just then, my mother's voice sounded from outside the door. "Luna, that's so rude. How could you leave Grandma down there all by herself?" Mom's voice sounded especially plaintive through the door, as if truly reproaching an unfilial child. I said nothing and began repeating psychological affirmations to myself. I'm asleep, and the rules never said I couldn't disobey Mom's request. Luna really isn't a good child. Grandma asked you to carry her up to the room to sleep, didn't she? Aren't you going to obey? Grandma will get upset, you know. The gentle blade, each cut meant to kill. The phone showed 12:05. I had to act fast. I gritted my teeth and rushed to open the door, and the sight of my mother made my scalp crawl. Her hair hung loose as she stood in the doorway. The left side of her face had been chewed to a pulp. She edged toward me, a thick stench of blood threatening to drown me. I gripped the doorknob, yawned, and forced a smile. Almost fell asleep. The soundproofing on this door is pretty good, huh? I shifted my body, dodging my mother's outstretched hand. Her crimson nails left a solitary arc in the air. I'm going to pick up Grandma. I bolted downstairs in one breath, only to have that breath catch and lodge in my chest. Grandma smiled and waved at me. For a dizzy instant, I actually thought that kind, benevolent grandmother had come back. But the next second, she plucked her own head off. The ashen skull sat cupped in her hands. She fumbled around and finally pulled out a chunk of flesh, still slick with the metallic stink of brain matter, and shoved it into her mouth, mumbling, "Luna, honestly, coming to get me this late, I've been starving to death." After speaking, she put her head back on her neck. My legs went weak, trembling uncontrollably. How could that be, Grandma? I was just tucking you into bed. Hee hee. I knew Luna was the most dutiful to her grandmother. Now hurry and carry Grandma back to the room. I forced myself forward. Just as I bent down, Grandma leapt onto my back. I thought I heard a bone go crack. I hurriedly grabbed the table in front of me, so distraught I could only cry without tears. Why didn't that old fool of a man write a manual back then? I must go buy one. She was so thin, yet weighed as though she were a mountain. I could barely move, pressed to the ground and inching along. Grandmother's head lay on my shoulder, teetering. I could feel a knife-sharp gaze boring into me. I kept my eyes straight ahead. Must get back to the room before 3. Crawling step by step, racing against time. Grandma let out an occasional cluck of laughter. Her body trembled and clods of dirt fell, landing on my neck and, the moment they touched my skin, turning into all kinds of insects. The fine itching sent goosebumps rippling over my whole body. It's all hallucination, all hallucination. These things can only parasite her. I held my breath and forced myself to concentrate as I crawled forward. By the time I finally laid Grandma on the bed, I was drenched in sweat and collapsed, sitting on the floor. Luna, I'm so cold. Go bring the bedding from Dad's room. I glanced at the alarm clock, 1:50. You must be in bed before 3 a.m. If I went, I wouldn't make it in time. There was no way I'd make it. I grit my teeth and hurriedly hauled all the clothes out of the wardrobe and spread them on the bed, trying to distract Grandma. A bright glint flashed in Grandma's eyes, as if she'd found the perfect excuse. Her voice went hoarse as she said, Luna isn't listening to Grandma anymore. No, my brain was clogged with paste. I scrambled for a plan. Don't go into Mom and Dad's room. The wardrobe is safe. So, if I could just muster the courage to dart into the wardrobe in Dad's room and hold out there until the last minute before returning to my own room. After 2, before 3, I would have an excuse to refuse Grandma. I wiggled my numb legs, stood in the doorway, counted down 3, then threw the door open and bolted out. And my father was standing in the doorway, holding a kitchen knife. His remaining left hand, not exactly steady, swung the knife down toward my head. Go to hell, all of you, all worthless. I shoved the door with all my strength, knocking him back several steps. The doll. I scrambled onto the bed, snatching the doll, while Dad had already risen again, his mouth a bloody maw, the corners pulled up almost to his ears, charging at me with the cleaver he'd used to chop the cat that afternoon. At the same time, I hurled the doll at him. It sprang to life the instant it hit, clinging to his body with a death grip. He tore the doll off with force. Before absolute strength, the doll quickly fell to the ground. And in Dad's eyes, there seemed to be nothing left but the doll. He raised the knife and hacked at it again and again. What was torn to pieces was not cloth, but flesh, accompanied by the sound of blades striking bone, as if he were the most seasoned butcher in a slaughterhouse. Worthless junk, dragging me down, go die. I couldn't bear to look any longer. I ran straight for the opposite door and hid inside the wardrobe. The cursing next door never stopped. I pressed my racing heart down, hollow, as if a corner were missing. I couldn't stop the tears from falling. If that doll really was Mom, did I just kill her with my own hands? I clamped a hand over my mouth, smothering the sob. Suddenly, every sound stopped. The room fell into a deathly silence. The wardrobe door was tapped lightly. Luna, are you in there? It's Mom. It's okay now. Everyone's safe. Come out. It's Mom. No, wrong. The person in the closet couldn't hear the sound from outside. She wasn't Mom. I dare not even breathe. I shut my eyes and pretended to be deaf. The wardrobe was slammed hard, and the faint calls turned into a piercing wail. Luna, Luna, come save Mommy. Your Mommy's good child. Come save Mommy. Luna, how can you be so cruel? Mommy is going to die. After Mommy dies, she'll go to hell. You must save me. Luna, come out and save me. It was you who killed your mother. Blood seeped through the cracks, the viscous liquid running onto my shoulders, down my arms, and pooling in my ankles. A piercing scream assaulted my eardrums. I clutched my head, Yet the scene felt unbearably familiar. Those instinctive movements, that automatic self-brainwashing that pretended not to hear, everything was horribly familiar. When had any of this happened before? Why couldn't I remember any of it? I began to sort out my thoughts, trying to see the rules hidden beneath the rules. Mom won't attack proactively. She's always been on the defensive, so her threat level should be the lowest. Grandma's legs can't walk, but that doesn't guarantee she won't attack by some other means. As for Dad, the gleaming kitchen knife flashed before my eyes, undeniably the most dangerous of them. But he had no right hand and couldn't straighten his back. Those were his weaknesses. I steadied myself, tried to muster courage. The watch read 2:55. I had to go back to my room. At some point, the wailing outside had ceased. Only faint sobbing remained. I groped in the pitch-dark wardrobe for a long time, trying to find something hard to use as a weapon, and my hand closed around a knife. Why would there be a knife in Mom's wardrobe? I thought for a moment, then kept it in my hand and pulled out one of Mom's winter-padded jackets. When Grandma is enraged, quickly stick the ancestral paper money from the storage room onto Grandma's face. That's not Mom. Mom wouldn't attack voluntarily. Go straight to the storage room and get the paper money. I haven't spoken to the living for so long that I've grown used to talking to myself. I clenched the knife and opened the cabinet door. Mom lay in a pool of blood. The crimson flooded my eyes with a stinging pain. She painfully lifted an arm toward me, gasping through her throat. She was begging me for help. Don't be fooled. I gritted my teeth, went around her, and headed for the door. Through the peephole, I couldn't see Dad's figure, and there was no sound at all. Yet the unknown is always the most terrifying. I felt uneasy. Sweat had soaked my palms, sticky and making it almost impossible to hold the knife. The storeroom was at the very back of the second floor, only a few steps away. I clamped the quilted jacket under my arm and slowly opened the door, when suddenly a great force shoved it wide open. It was Dad. His empty sleeves were dripping blood, his eyeballs bulging out, his flesh barely holding on. I slammed the jacket over his head and jabbed at the shoulder of his severed arm. Dad screamed and crumpled to the floor. Run. I only have 3 minutes. Luckily, with the Ghost Festival approaching, the Helm money had already been taken out and set aside. I grabbed a dozen sheets and dashed back to the room. My heart hammered once, then again. Ding! The clock read exactly 3 o'clock. The whole house had fallen silent again. It seemed that this 3 o'clock rule was something everyone had to obey, which was why Dad had suddenly gone mad, desperate to be done with me quickly. But why in the end? Even though our family's finances had worsened, I always believed that as long as we were together, we could get through anything. Now I didn't even know if I could make it through the next 2 days. Before the alarm rings tomorrow morning, don't close your eyes. Don't leave the bed. After the heart-stopping panic of fleeing subsided, drowsiness set in. My eyelids were at war, as if 2 huge lead weights were dragging them down. Grandma lay beside me. She suddenly turned on her side to face me, one hand gently patting my stomach, humming a tune I knew well. Luna, grow up quickly. Grandma, will you sing to Luna? The moon is bright, the wind is still, leaves shade the window lattice. The hazy dreamland is peaceful and gentle. I just want so badly to sleep soundly. No, this isn't right. I snapped my eyes open. Grandma's face was no more than 10 centimeters from mine, her hands reduced to mere bones hovering at either side of my neck, her gaping mouth drooling, stuffed with rotten flesh. I had nearly become one of them. I suddenly slapped the joss paper I was holding onto Grandma's forehead, forcing her back down onto the pillow, then shoved the rest of the paper all over her face. Grandma finally fell silent. I slashed my own forearm with a knife. The pain jolted me fully awake. I must not fall asleep. I absolutely must not fall asleep. By 9 in the morning, I felt like I was about to ascend to immortality. I hadn't closed my eyes for a full day and night. 3 scratches already marred my hand. I understood then that waiting from dawn until dusk was more than merely unpleasant. It was like slow slicing, as if I were cutting my own flesh one knife stroke at a time. I was silently rolling my eyes when a message arrived, then voided. The food in the bedside cabinet is safe to eat. Grandpa's a good man. I'm Grandpa. Don't believe Grandpa. I'm Dad. Dogs are man's best friend. Dogs love you. Don't trust outsiders. Only family loves you unconditionally. If Dad starts burning Joss paper, stop him immediately. If you have trouble, call Mama for help. Mama will never refuse any of Luna's requests. What does that mean, Grandpa too? And my grandpa, who's been dead 7 years, his bones nearly turned to dust. After being hunted by my own father last night, I was already numb to the weirdness, but I couldn't help snarking. The Ghost Festival isn't the Mid-Autumn Festival. There's no need for a family reunion like this. Or is it that Dad couldn't kill me, so he sent Grandpa to do an intergenerational hunt? A different kind of family bonding across generations? And the dog, cross-species assassination. R-ring. R-ring. The alarm went off. I quickly hit stop, fished a few packets of bread out of the bedside drawer, and shoved them all into my mouth. Who knew what kind of grim feast today would bring? People are iron, rice is steel. You have to eat your fill before you can run. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Luna, are you up? The sun's roasting your backside. Get up and eat. It was Dad's voice, but there wasn't a trace of hoarseness. It sounded unnaturally normal. I crept to the door on tiptoe and peered through the peephole. Dad stood on the other side, back straight, raising his right hand to knock again. Right hand? Dad's right hand was back. Luna, what are you doing? Go wash up quickly. Let your dad carry me downstairs, and that'll be fine. Grandma also sat on the edge of the bed, her face all kind and gentle, though that burial shroud she wore was still horrifying. I had held the knife all night, ready for anything. I opened the door. The danger I had expected did not occur. Dad patted my shoulder, smiling as he urged me to hurry and wash up, then walked around me and hoisted Grandma onto his back with incredible ease, even chiding her to eat more because she was getting too thin. Grandma smiled bashfully and said that when you get old, you just can't eat that much anymore. Grandma, there's still a stain on my clothes from the drool you left last night. I closed my eyes and didn't look again at that strange scene of filial piety. The dishes were laid out on the table, clean and tidy. Dad and Grandma had already taken their seats, urging me to hurry and eat breakfast, as if everything from yesterday had been nothing but a dream. Now that it had ended, everyone else was fine, and only I remained trapped in the nightmare. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Dad opened the door as if it were routine, and 2 people in police uniforms walked in. They received a report from a little girl saying there had been a homicide here. A ringing filled my ears. Amid the buzzing, they carried down a body from upstairs, covered with a white sheet. Dad gently put his arm around my shoulder. Luna, I'm sorry. Your mother's mental state hasn't been stable. Yesterday I was too tired and didn't watch her properly. She killed herself. His voice quavered into something like tears, like a devoted husband mourning his wife. I stepped back 2 paces without showing any emotion. Young lady, you were the one who called the police, right? We hope you'll come with us to the station and cooperate with an investigation. The 2 men stood outside the door, staring straight at me, their smiles curved in exactly the same way. I leaned against the door frame. The sunlight outside was blindingly bright. I hadn't seen the sun in far too long. If I stepped out, as long as I stepped out, it would all be over. Something flashed through my mind. On the night of the hungry ghosts, do not go out the front door before 3 in the morning. I drew back the foot that had hovered in midair. At the same time, the 2 men's faces immediately fell. They pulled knives from behind them and plunged them into their own throats. One stab wasn't enough, so they kept cutting. Blood spurted onto the white cloth covering the corpses. I let out a terrified scream. Dad said, "Everyone's gone. What is Luna still looking at?" I slammed the door shut, my heart racing, and the doorbell rang again. This time, Dad suddenly rushed over and told me I must not open the door under any circumstances. He gripped my hand hard, his eyes full of panic and unease. He was frightened. I nodded and smiled, saying okay. Only then did he relax, praising me for being sensible. And the moment his grip loosened, I immediately pressed the handle and pulled the door open. It's Grandpa. Grandpa had died back when I was in elementary school. His sudden appearance left me dazed. Luna, long time no see. Grandpa has missed you all to death. I almost took the wrong road just now. Take the wrong road, and you won't be able to see us anymore. A frail black dog lay in Grandpa's arms, whining softly from time to time. Here, we found this at the gate of your complex. Victor, honestly, you're an adult. Can't you keep an eye on people, or at least on the family pet? Dad, standing beside us, trembled all over, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. His teeth kept chattering with his CKCK like fingernails scratching a wall, making my skin crawl. After so many years, our family had somehow come back together in a bizarre way. The little black dog crouched at my feet. I looked at the dense ring of stitches around its neck and was utterly certain this was my mother. But grandfather didn't stay long. He hunched his shoulders and, shaking, lifted Grandma onto his back. He let out a long sigh to Dad, then turned to me. Luna, Grandpa is gone. Grandpa couldn't protect the ones he loved. Now he is being punished. But you still have a chance. Grandma leaned against Grandpa's shoulder, her eyes vacant. At that moment, the corner of my heart was being smashed violently. I reached out but couldn't catch Grandpa's coat. They vanished outside the door. Dad, can we talk? Maybe the outcome of many things shouldn't be like this. Fragmented memories rose slowly, but it was still like searching for a needle in the ocean. One false move, and you'd cut yourself. He rushed over and shook my shoulders. His face twisted into a purplish mask. You look at what you've done. That wasn't a living person at all. How could you let him in? Do you know how dangerous that was just now? No, the master was right. We can't let them reincarnate. We can't let them reincarnate. He shoved me aside and rushed up the stairs. Watching my father's face, now completely contorted, my grandfather's words echoed in my mind over and over. What could I do to make everything restart? I had a feeling he had already decided to destroy everything. Without pausing to think why, I quickly followed after him. At some point, the storage room had been hung with talismans. In the brazier at the center sat two little effigies, one male and one female. Their eyes were wide and fixed on me, but they couldn't move an inch. If Dad starts burning paper, stop him immediately. He had gone so mad as to want to consign Grandpa and Grandma to eternal damnation. My scalp prickled. I rushed forward to stop him, only to have Dad grab my throat. His split mouth was inches from my face, and I mustered every ounce of strength to scream. Mom! A little black dog burst in through that narrow door. It bit my father's leg, and with a cry escaped from the devil's grasp. He grabbed the little black dog and smashed it against the wall. The pain drove him completely back into bestiality. The right hand is the weak point. How to press the right hand into the brazier. Against that advantage of strength, there was simply no way I could manage it. Dad, who had completely lost his mind, charged at me. I rolled and scrambled down the stairs, headed straight for the kitchen, and picked the most suitable weapon, a cleaver used for chopping through hard bones when slaughtering pigs. I steadied myself, though the hand holding the cleaver trembled uncontrollably. The kitchen door split open. Dad, like a berserk demon from hell, burst in. His face was gone, no longer human, utterly transformed into a monster. Right behind him came the little black dog. She was so thin, but her dark eyes seemed to blaze like fire. We locked eyes. Words were unnecessary. The unbreakable bond of blood conveyed everything between us. She bit down hard on Dad's leg, forcing him to kneel. Then her sharp canine sank into the back of his neck. I waited for the right moment, aimed at the right hand, and with one slice it came off, blood spurting. Dad fell to the floor, wailing in pain, but the severed arm writhed on the ground as if alive. I grabbed it and clutched it tightly to my chest, not even taking time to wipe the blood from my face as I rushed up the stairs. I hoped it would all be in time. The severed arm was tossed into the brazier. The flames leapt up suddenly, sparks flying as they bit by bit, into the struggling limb. But it could not escape. The one who plays with fire burns himself. In the end, it could only serve as its own fuel. The heart's violent pounding had not yet subsided when a familiar voice exploded into my ear. Luna, you're too cruel. How can you do this to Daddy? I did it all for the sake of this family. If that's how it is, then we'll all die. What? Before I could turn my head, a great force flipped me over. The metallic stench of blood surged at my nostrils. I fell to the ground and watched, helpless, as he staggered over and kicked the brazier so it toppled. In an instant, the flames leapt up, excited, and uncontrollably began to set everything around them alight. Tables, chairs, clothes. It's over. Everything's over. A blinding light assaulted me. It swallowed me. And yet amid the towering waves of fire, I remembered everything. 3 years ago, when a market was bad and my father's company sank deeper into debt, he started gambling. At first he said it would ease the pressure. Later he brainwashed himself into believing it was the only way, that if he could just win back what he'd lost, everything could go back to how it was. But the more he played, the bigger it became. The debts rolled up like a snowball, until enemies pursued him and he lost an arm. And Grandma, after a fall, her legs and feet became unsteady, but there was no real danger to her life. It was just on one perfectly ordinary morning that Dad carried her out the door on his back and never carried her back in. Since then, his temper grew more violent and paranoid. He'd suddenly claim someone in the house was watching him, then curl up in a corner terrified, insisting they weren't human. He began fighting with Mom constantly. If she was late coming home from the market, he'd call to accuse her of sleeping around. Mom, so proud and beautiful, always composed, had to endure her husband's slanders and even his beatings. I hid in the wardrobe, too afraid to make a sound, hearing Mom's moans and cries. Once again I chose cowardice, or rather, Mom chose to protect me once more. The rules that had been etched in my mind faded one by one, leaving only one clear, unmistakable line. I'm the one who loves you. Crossed out, Mom doesn't love you. I lay on the floor, blood pouring from my body, the fire spreading fast, devouring the whole house like a tidal wave. I could no longer feel my legs. This time it was really the end. Ow! A black shape cut across the flames like a bolt of lightning. I stared in shock as the little black dog bit my arm and tugged with all its might to pull me outward. It's no use. Tears welling to the point of overflow, my voice breaking, I begged Mom to hurry and leave. But how could she ever let go? Her flesh had been imprisoned in that doll, split open, torn to pieces. Now her soul was trapped in the body of this little black dog, stubbornly tugging at her daughter. Not far off, Dad lay on the ground, flames already consuming his whole body. He used to be, clearly, a good father. My throat ached from the smoke, raw and parched. I couldn't even cry out. Luna, Grandpa is gone. Grandpa couldn't protect the people he loved, and now he is being punished. But you still have a chance. Grandpa was right. I forced myself upright and met my mother's eyes. Mom, I know it's you. I'm sorry, but this time let's walk out together, okay? She let out a sob, tears glinting in her eyes. With my mother's help, I edged forward bit by bit. The stairway had already been destroyed, and tongues of flame had invaded every crevice of the house. The little water left in the teapot was all that put out the flames at the door, but we had to be faster. The fire was simply too fierce. I pressed the doorknob and, meeting my mother's frantic gaze, shoved her out. Then I slammed myself against the door, my senses dissolving. I could no longer hear the cries from outside. We must always follow the rules. No one can break them. I watched my legs gradually dissolve and shifted my gaze to the window. That damned sunset is really beautiful.